The NFL offseason is just getting underway, but the Jets are already hard at work upgrading their secondary. Let's break it down today. It's Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Monday, March 11th, 2024, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. Subscribe to the show for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll get new episodes as soon as they're posted. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, please give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. It helps us out. It helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, today is the kind of official, kind of unofficial start of the NFL offseason. The legal tampering period begins at noon Eastern. Teams are allowed to begin talking with free agents from other teams. But the Jets got an early jump start on the offseason this weekend. We're going to talk about what the Jets did over the weekend, trying to upgrade their roster. I think the biggest move the Jets made was on Sunday when the team agreed to terms with safety Chuck Clark. Now, Chuck Clark might be a familiar name to you if you're a Jets fan, but you might not be sure exactly where you should place it. Chuck Clark was actually the first player the Jets acquired last offseason. They got him before Allen Lazard. They got him before Randall Cobb. They got him before Aaron Rodgers. The Jets traded a 7th-round pick to Baltimore for Chuck Clark, who's a safety. And at the time, I thought it was a really, really savvy move. Chuck Clark's a good player, guy who's a good, very solid safety in this league. And the reason Baltimore traded him was Ravens just had an excess of really good safeties. You may remember they drafted Kyle Hamilton a couple of years ago. It's just a team with a lot of good safeties, and it became a numbers game. Clark wasn't quite as good as some of the other guys that they had, but still a very good player. The Jets tried to fill their need at safety by trading for Clark. It seemed like he was going to be a guy who would fit right in. And then during the offseason program, he suffered an ACL injury and missed the full season. And it was unfortunate for the Jets. Now, of course, the Jets defense ended up being very good, but they entered this offseason with a need at safety. And, the need at safety was nowhere near as critical as the needs they have on the offensive side of the ball, on the offensive line, or at wide receiver. But they did need somebody to step in because Jordan Whitehead is a free agent. He's probably priced himself out of the Jets' range, and I got to be honest with you, I'm not a big Whitehead guy. I think he's too inconsistent. He can play the deep middle fine. He of course had that 3 interception game against Buffalo. He's okay in the box. The problem with him is just like he's not a good tackler. You get him one-on-one in space, it's a shaky proposition, and he also takes bad angles when he lines up from deep. He can play the pass deep okay, but if he has to step up in the run game from deep, he could take a bad angle, run himself out of a play. I think Clark's a better player than Whitehead. The terms of the contract are not initially known right now, but considering Clark is coming off a serious injury, this is a 1-year contract. The thought is likely that they give him a 1-year contract. They'll try and rebuild his value, show that he's recovered from his injury, and play effective football. And if you were listening to the show last week, I mentioned Chuck Clark a couple times. I said that I felt like he was a very logical fit for this football team because Jets had to get somebody to play safety. And they did not have a lot of money to spend. The big dollars are probably going to have to go to the wide receiver position and the offensive line. And there's not a lot of money to go around. Fortunately, safety is usually a place where you can find decent players at a reasonable value. And I think there's a pretty good chance Clark is going to be an upgrade on Jordan Whitehead. Again, really solid all-around player. I think a very good player. I think to the extent the Jets had a weakness on defense last year, it was the safety position. So again, I think Whitehead was very up and down. I think Tony Adams was very up and down. But it didn't really hurt them that much because, if you have a pass rush that can get home, there aren't as many threats of explosive plays that your safeties are going to have to deal with down the field. You have corners who can cover on the outside. Well, they don't really need safety help. If you have a linebacker like Quincy Williams who can cover the middle of the field, has really rangy, can go sideline to sideline, what's less ground your safeties need to cover? So even though the Jets, I think, had a weakness at the safety position, it was not overly pronounced. It wasn't a spot where they absolutely had to go out and spend money in free agency to fix things. It was just one of those things. They had to get somebody who can play. And by re-signing Chuck Clark, in my view, they got somebody who can play. And you head into this season, with Clark as a safety, I think he's probably going to be an upgrade on Jordan Whitehead. And then you also have Tony Adams, who, while he was very up and down, that was year 2. It was first time getting major playing time in the NFL. And I said this last week. I think about Quincy Williams, different position. Quincy was a linebacker, Adams is a safety, but there are lots of parallels. Kind of a guy who was under the radar. Quincy was a waiver wire pickup. Adams was a non-drafted free agent signing. Both guys who kind of stepped into the lineup. Both guys the Jets were very high on, and both guys who, at least early in their starting careers, very up and down, sometimes playing a little too out of control. Now, just because Quincy took the trajectory he took, that doesn't necessarily mean Tony Adams is going to do the same thing. Doesn't necessarily mean Tony Adams is going to improve. Certainly doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to turn into an all-pro. But I think it's reasonable to say, there's a chance Tony Adams could improve this year. And the Jets safety position could improve. And that would help the defense. Listen, I don't want to make safety out, especially with where the Jets are, to be a make or break thing. Again, they just need solid guys. They need somebody you can put in there. And, he's going to play solid football. I think they got that in Chuck Clark. Now, here's what I really like about it. There's been a lot of talk, and we discussed this last week, that this safety market's going to be pretty down this year. And by down, I mean there aren't going to be big contracts given out. There's lots of quality, there's lots of supply, but teams don't really demand safeties because it's not really viewed as a high impact position. So it's possible the Jets might be able to get another guy in here at a very cheap price, a very solid player. There are lots of guys who are available. We'll see who the market falls out for. Here's the other thing is, even in a normal year, there's usually a good safety or two, a good starting safety available in like May or June. It's always a spot where you can always find somebody. So Jets may end up finding somebody who's an upgrade. And Jets may end up improving their safety position even further. But now I feel like you can at least go into the season feeling okay with what you got. Because again, you've got a guy who's just a professional safety in Chuck Clark, and you have a younger guy with some degree of upside in Tony Adams. So, I think that this was a move the Jets had to make. I think it was a very logical move because Clark's not going to cost much, and the Jets had to find a cost-efficient way to deal with this position. Well, the Jets have done just that. And look, there's a lot that has to be done this offseason. We know the important work that's got to be done on the offensive side of the ball because the Jets have to fix their offense. But I have to say, heading into like the unofficial or official start of the offseason today, the Jets are doing the obvious things. They cut Laken Tomlinson. I didn't think they were going to do it, even though I thought it was an obvious thing. I really did not think they would cut Laken Tomlinson, so they pleasantly surprised me there. I thought they cut C.J. Uzomah. They did. They cut C.J. Uzomah last week. Logical move. Uzomah did not deliver for this team. A disappointing free agent signing a couple of years ago. Jeremy Ruckert can now step into a bigger role as tight end number 2, unless the Jets do something in the draft or bring in another player. And they re-signed Chuck Clark. This was kind of the low-hanging fruit for this team, in part because, the Jets did give up a pick to get Chuck Clark. So you gave up a pick for him last year. You might as well try and get some production. The other aspect of this is Clark is, of course, coming off a torn ACL, but you have to remember, it happened during the offseason program last year. So this isn't even like, with Aaron Rodgers coming back, he suffered an injury week 1. And you say, okay, that's going to be a full calendar year. You'd expect him to be back. You wouldn't expect any lingering, issues to the extent there's going to be like a lingering medical issue with the Achilles. He's probably going to be in okay shape. Chuck Clark suffered his injury last spring during the offseason program. So he'll have, more than a year to get ready for the season. So you'd expect him to be really fully back, because of how early he suffered the injury. It was months before the start of the season. So he'll have a full year of recovery under his belt as he returns to the lineup. So I have good things to say about this move. I think it's a smart move. I think it's a move the Jets needed to make. And the Jets made it. So good job, Jets. Now, head here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll stay with the secondary. Jets signed a player to add to their cornerback depth on Sunday. I don't think he's going to have that big of an impact on the team, but I'm really intrigued by this signing, and I think there are a number of different angles this signing is really interesting. I'll tell you who the player the Jets signed is and what those angles are as we continue this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. This episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day. A big shout out to you everydayers. If you're new to the show, this is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We have new episodes each day, Monday through Friday, and then bonus episodes as needed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on YouTube and the free Fire TV channels app. Today on Locked On Jets, we're getting the offseason ready. The legal tampering period begins at noon Eastern. So what's been happening over the last couple of days, undoubtedly in the NFL, is the illegal tampering period. Teams, as of noon, are allowed to speak with players who are free agents to be, who are with other teams. And the reason it's considered tampering is that the new league year does not officially begin until Wednesday. And since 2013, the league has allowed teams to, quote unquote, legally tamper with players on other teams 2 days before the start of free agency. Why did they do that? It's quite a story. It's because the league found that teams were tampering illegally with players for 2 days before the start of free agency. So they said, let's just make it legal instead of enforcing the rules. So what do you think the incentive is now? The league has shown that it will respond to tampering that's illegal by just making it legal. So I'm sure over the last couple of days, you've seen there have been teams that have illegally tampered with players. In fact, like as soon as noon hits, there's going to be like some announcement that a player has agreed to a contract with a new team. And I guarantee the deal did not take place in a minute. But there was a player the Jets agreed to terms to yesterday, Isaiah Oliver. Now, the reason the Jets were able to sign Isaiah Oliver before the start of the legal tampering period is that he was cut by the San Francisco 49ers. So a guy like Bryce Huff is still technically under contract to the Jets till the league year ends on Wednesday. Whereas somebody like Isaiah Oliver, he doesn't have a contract. He was cut. If you're under contract right now, your contract doesn't expire until the league year ends. Somebody who was cut like Isaiah Oliver was, he's a free agent. He can sign with anybody at any point, and he has agreed to terms with the New York Jets. Oliver spent the 2023 season with the NFC champion 49ers. He spent his first 5 seasons, 2018 through 2022, with the Atlanta Falcons. He was a second-round pick out of Colorado in 2018. Figures to be a backup for the Jets. And for a guy who's going to be a backup, I actually think that there are lots of different angles to this that are interesting to me. And I'm sure I'm overanalyzing this because this is probably not a player who's going to play that significant of a role for the New York Jets. But here are some of the key things to know about Oliver. Is that even though he's kind of on the bigger side for a guy with this role, the last 4 years or so, he's been almost exclusively a slot corner who's played close to the line of scrimmage. When he was drafted out of Colorado, I think the thought was that he was going to be an outside corner. But around 2020, it was during the season in 2020, Atlanta started playing him in the slot. Now, the reason that's significant is Oliver, during the 2020 season, moved to the slot. If you're not familiar with what happened in Atlanta early in the 2020 season, is that they made a coaching change. Dan Quinn was fired. They made some other adjustments. One of the adjustments Atlanta made was that Jeff Ulbrich, who was on their coaching staff, was promoted to defensive coordinator. And Ulbrich is now the Jets defensive coordinator. So Ulbrich has pretty extensive experience working with Oliver. He was the defensive coordinator around the time Oliver moved to the slot, played close to the line of scrimmage, and was kind of like a versatile guy for much of his Atlanta career. He played close to the line of scrimmage, but they liked him. They liked Dean Pease, who replaced Ulbrich the next year as defensive coordinator, liked playing him, maybe having him blitz, play the run. And if you're familiar with like the way the slot corner works in the NFL, slot corner is typically your third corner who's on the field, and he replaces typically an off-ball linebacker. So your slot corner kind of has to have like run responsibilities. He kind of has like linebacker responsibilities against the run in many cases. And Oliver, because he's bigger, might give you a little bit of an edge there over your typical slot corner. Now, Oliver went to San Francisco in 2023, and it did not go well. I mean, he was benched. It went poorly, and that's part of the reason they cut him. He was coming off an injury, and he just was not able to make it work. Some of the people with San Francisco felt that he wasn't fully recovered, and that'll probably play into whether or not he's effective with the New York Jets. Is maybe 2 years out from his injury, could he bounce back a little bit better than he did 1 year? That's something worth watching. What's his role going to be with the New York Jets? Well, number one, I think he's probably going to be the backup for Michael Carter II. And, I saw a lot of speculation online that, this means Bryce Hall's leaving. Bryce Hall's a backup corner for the Jets who's about to hit free agency. He started a couple games this year. He was actually a starter for the Jets back in 2021. I don't think that like a guy who's only played the slots the last 4 years has much of a bearing on whether Bryce Hall stays or goes, because Bryce Hall's an outside corner. So these guys essentially play two different roles. I think Bryce Hall's probably going to leave, but I don't think Isaiah Oliver has anything to do with it. I think Oliver is going to be the backup slot corner for Michael Carter II. Here's one thing I wonder, though, because, I just talked about how he was a little bit versatile under Dean Pease with Atlanta, where, they liked kind of playing him in like a hybrid slot corner linebacker role. Well, we know the Jets, they like to add speed at the linebacker position. They've already converted a couple of guys from safety to linebacker during the Robert Saleh tenure. There was Hamza Nasruddin, who was a late round pick in 2021, who really did not work out. Then Jamie Sherwood, who's worked out a little bit better. He's kind of a part-time player. And then even this year, even though he's technically listed as a safety, Ashton Davis played a lot close to the line of scrimmage. I would say Ashton Davis was almost playing like a hybrid linebacker safety role. So there's a guy like Oliver who's, again, on the bigger side for a corner, especially a slot corner. And I think about this, and I wonder, like, maybe against teams that, like to play a couple, maybe multiple tight end sets, is Oliver like a hybrid guy who could find a role? Maybe I'm overthinking it. Now, as I mentioned, I don't think Bryce Hall status will be impacted by Oliver being on this team. I do wonder, however, about Justin Hardy. And I might be the one Justin Hardy fan in the world, because I know Justin Hardy gets, criticized a lot by the fan base. Guy who really only plays special teams. And Oliver's like a guy who plays a lot of special teams. And if you've looked at the last couple of years, what the Jets have done, it's clear some of their roster decisions have been made with Brant Boyer in mind. It's clear that the Jets do value special teams. There's a lot I can say negative about this regime. A lot negative I can say about Joe Douglas. A lot negative I can say about Robert Saleh. But one thing I do appreciate that they do is they really do focus on players, making sure that there are enough players who are really good at special teams. Oliver's a guy who's played across units. And Justin Hardy's going to hit the free agency. So I wonder, maybe is this a sign Hardy could be on his way out? Something worth watching. Again, I'm probably overthinking this. Like, I've given you so much detail on this guy who's going to be a backup corner, who's probably going to be the Jets' number 5 corner, barely will see the field next year. But I think there are lots of different angles to this one. So, I hope you found this as interesting as I do, because I don't know that there are many number 5 corner signings that have as many elements to this that offer some degree of intrigue as the signing of Isaiah Oliver. But of course, this offseason, most of the focus for the Jets is going to be on upgrading the offense, not on upgrading the defense. And as we continue on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets, we're going to talk about a trade that happened over the weekend in the NFL. It was for a player the Jets reportedly were interested on, but they evidently passed on the trade. We'll talk about what it means continuing this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Again, that's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. I mean, this sounds great to me. If you're like me, like every year, it feels like all 4 of my final 4 teams are out by the end of the second round. So, this is a real opportunity for you. Again, you don't have to worry about busted brackets anymore. You can still keep some intrigue, because again, you can bet on every game of the upcoming NCAA tournament. And again, $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, it's FanDuel.com/lockedon. It's one word with no space, LOCKEDON, and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Monday. The NFL offseason officially gets underway on Monday as the legal tampering period begins, but moves have already begun to be made. Jets have brought in a couple players for their secondary, Chuck Clark and Isaiah Oliver. There was also an NFL trade that was announced over the weekend. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver, goes from Denver to Cleveland for a 5th-round pick and a 6th-round pick. Now, the deal cannot officially be executed until Wednesday. So essentially what happens is the teams agree to a trade, but they can't file the paperwork to make the deal official until Wednesday. What's significant here is that there were reports the Jets were actually interested in Jeudy and checked in on him. Now, what I will say is that if the Jets did not see fit to top a 5th-round pick and a 6th-round pick, I question how interested they really were. But it makes sense that they checked in on him because wide receiver is obviously a huge need for this team. And Judy's a solid player. I don't think he's a go-to guy, but I think he's a good second banana. And for the Jets, you have a go-to guy in Garrett Wilson. Now, in an ideal world, you get someone better than Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson would be like one of the best number 2 receivers in the NFL. But Garrett Wilson can hold his own as the number 1 receiver. And again, Judy was a guy who could be logical for the Jets. And the more I look at this situation, the more I feel like the trade market may be the way to go at wide receiver because if you're an everydayer, you may have heard over the last couple of weeks some of my hesitancy with this market, where Calvin Ridley's a good player, but he's going to cost a lot of money. And then you got someone like Hollywood Brown who would be a good fit at the right price, but with so little supply at the wide receiver position, I wonder whether he'll be available at the right price. And then there's some other guys. You have to be very careful with this wide receiver market this offseason because they're guys who are solid. They're guys who maybe are worth a roll of the dice if the price is low, but if the price is going to explode, which it very well may in free agency, so there's guys you might want to stay away from. Whereas, if you're looking out there, Judy got traded. There's some talk that maybe Cortland Sutton, Judy's teammate with Denver, possibly on the trade block. The Chargers, Mike Williams, guy who could be out there. Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson. And if the market is a 5th and the 6th round pick for a solid number 2 type receiver, and I think that's all the guys I mentioned are like solid number 2 type receivers. That might be a better deal for the Jets because most of those guys have contracts that are more reasonable than what are going to be given out in free agency. Now, the trade of Judy has brought out a lot of trepidation in the Jets fan base, as it always does. I guarantee you what will happen today is the Jets fan base online will have a collective freak out until the Jets sign their first player. And when the Jets aren't involved in the trade, people freak out about it. I try not to freak out about things like this. I think the trade would have been a good one if the Jets had made it. I think, if they top that offer for a 5 and a 6, and they may have had to get creative because they don't have a 5. But if they had made that trade, I think it would have been a good one. I think it would have filled a need. But I'm not ready to criticize the Jets yet because we need to see how this plays out. It's possible they have something else lined up that's just as good, if not better. It's possible they'll go out and make a good move for a wide receiver. So I want to see the end game. I understand why fans complain about it. I understand why fans are anxious, but I can't criticize them. Now I can't say I can't completely absolve them yet. I have to see how it plays out. And if you want to say, the Jets deserve no benefit of the doubt for the wide receiver position, if you want to say you want to criticize them because the Jets have earned zero benefit of the doubt over the last couple of years over the way they've handled receiver, I can't argue with that. I mean, everything Joe Douglas has done at wide receiver outside of drafting Garrett Wilson has been bad. I mean, this has been a position that's been really poorly handled by Douglas. I think his philosophies have been off. And I feel like, there's this expression, smartest guy in the room syndrome. I do think it's fair to say that like Douglas has had a little bit of that when it's come to dealing with the wide receiver position, where he thinks like instead of going out after established guys, he thinks he can find, he thinks he can just out scout everybody and find like a hidden gem somewhere. And we've seen this through the draft where he's drafted Elijah Moore and Denzel Mims in the 2nd round and it hasn't worked out. We've seen it in free agency where he's made moves that haven't worked out. Rashad Perryman back in 2020, Corey Davis, another example. In 2021, Alan Lazard last year, Mecole Hardman last year. I mean, lots of moves where Douglas kind of felt like and maybe Lazard was more about Aaron Rodgers, but the other moves are like Douglas thinking he can out scout everybody, he can find a hidden gem, and it hasn't worked out. And sometimes you reach a point where you have to say, you know what, I'm not great at finding hidden gems. I just need to find the proven guy. And Douglas has not done that. So I understand it. I think it's a fair point. I would not freak out, though. That's my only warning is like, let's wait for the Jets. Let's wait to see what happens before we have a collective freak out over what happens at the wide receiver position, because there's still guys available, still some guys who could hit the market, some unexpected names who could still hit the market. The Jets will have an opportunity to deal with the wide receiver position in an effective way. And although I do think Judy would have been a sensible move, I think the price for him was very good. And I think the Jets should still probably look at the trade market because it just feels like this is going to be a year of free agency where the prices in free agency at wide receiver is going to get out of control. Whereas on the trade market, there's going to be teams looking to dump contracts. And even though those contracts are going to be dumped, they're still going to be more reasonable than what's given out in free agency. So we'll see what happens. And maybe this is building to something bigger. Maybe it's building to something better for the New York Jets. But I guess if nothing else, you can be a little heartened that it sounds like the Jets were at least in on Judy, which on some level acknowledges that they understand they have a need and they have to address the wide receiver position. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast for us, please give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Have a great Monday, everybody. We'll be back next time to talk more Jets.